So I found, and I didn't know any better, so I go walking into the brokers in South Florida. I lived in Hollywood, Florida, and I said, do you guys happen to have anything that's seller financing? Of course, that went over well, but actually they did. So I looked at them and actually did a seller financing deal right out of the gate. That was in 1995 about. Anyway, from that point, the seller of that property happened to own a self-storage facility down there, a little mini storage. And after we'd performed on that a little while, they came back to me and said, well, would you be interested in the storage facility we have? Well, I'd learned enough that at that point in time, did the rent analysis and figured out, oh my gosh, this thing is like under $200 a unit in almost every situation. We rent it out by unit in that particular scenario. So I'm like, value play, though I didn't have the knowledge and the whole knowledge base that I have now. But anyway, purchased that, and then in 2003 ended up selling that first 10 units because that's when the market, was starting to rise and go crazy, especially in Florida. And, bought another 19-unit building, which we repositioned. That was my first adventure in a repositioning, was 19 units. That was the property that we bought. It was in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Don't you love the paint scheme? I don't know where they found the watermelon red, but they did. And we went in and worked on that thing, our own hands, for almost 18 months. Don't recommend it. But learned a lot. And when we were done, it came out looking like that. Turned around and sold it in 18 months for approximately $750,000 profit. Well, then the problem became 2005 and 6. And Florida went flat on its face, and my problem then became, okay, I just sold most of these properties. I've got this money, now what do I do? Because all I've ever done is invest in my own backyard, which there's nothing wrong with that, but at that moment, my backyard was pretty crappy. So it was like, well, what am I going to do? So I decided, you know what? That's when I found out about Dave. Went and read one of his books and went to the apartment thing that he does. And it was not much after that I did some of the other boot camps that were related to that, and that's where I met Sue. And basically from there, I've kind of got a summary of what happened. By the middle of 2009, which was about 8 months later from when I started doing the boot camp scene, we found our first deal. It was an 80-unit deal, 5.1 price tag. We raised $1.5 million on it. About a year later, 232-unit, $11.75 million deal. We raised $3.5 million on it. And the last deal we just closed in December, like 3 days before Christmas. 152 units, $3 million, $1 million raise. So now we've up to almost 500 units valued at about $29 million. And that's kind of when the juncture happened about 2 years ago when Sue came to me and said, look, would you be interested in coaching? And I said, and this is of course over at Dave's camp, and I said, sure, let's go. So started doing that about 2 years ago, and that's just been awesome because it's really been able to change a lot of people's lives, and it's kind of my way of giving back from all the wonderful stuff that's come my way by all these wonderful people who take the time like Sue to do this stuff. So anyway, basically, as we said, my partners and myself, we raised $6 million. Most of it's private and accredited investors. One thing I've learned is that those partners and investors, they really are in a certain way your clients. So you've got to really work on those relationships. It's about relationships, relationships, relationships. Building those, asking those investors for referrals. Once you get to know them, don't just assume whatever. And sometimes they'll throw it to you to pass it off to you. You'll be talking to them about money, and they're like, well, I don't know right now. Well, instead of just going, oh, okay, sorry. Well, do you have anybody that you know or somebody who's in your world that might be interested in what we're doing here? Because maybe they're just trying to throw you off to those people and see how you perform, and then all of a sudden they're going to jump in with both legs as soon as they know that they're off the hook with the deal. So anyway, we basically went for yield-driven stuff. The 8% cash and cash that we talk about, the 15 to 30% return overall, the whole picture. We started doing that through background checks, one-on-one meetings, going to things where you would meet other entrepreneurs, chambers of commerce meetings, Lions clubs, whatever, where you might run into people who are business people. That's kind of where we went to try to find the money. We did luckily come into some situations where we ended up with a couple celebrities in our deals via some contacts that we asked for referrals from. Can't share who those people are, but if I said the name, everybody in this room would know who it was. So How did we find them? Again, went to these networking meetings, went up personal family channels, down different things, and constantly asking for referrals. The big thing that I like to tell people is, and a lot of my students is, you need to educate your investors, especially if they're new to you, because a lot of times we get all this knowledge and all this information from the boot camps, but then all of a sudden it's, blah, 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 and you start talking about NOI and cash on cash, and a lot of people, if they don't have a real estate background, have absolutely no clue what you're talking about. They might have a business background, but they don't have a clue what you're talking about. So I say try to keep it simple. Keep it on a level where a person understands, because if a person has a confused mind or they don't understand it, they're probably going to say no, at least in the beginning. So you're much better off to find a way to present it to where it makes sense. Oh, I get it. So, try to keep that and try to educate your investors. Let them know that you've got a safe and calculated risk. I love this business because you get that question a lot of times. Well, isn't this risky? And I said, well, anything in life has some risk to it. Walking out the door has risk to it. But I like to consider the real estate business to be a business that's a calculated risk. We try to go in and calculate and find every angle we possibly can so that risk is calculated and minimized as much as possible. But yes, there is some risk to this. And but we'll do everything we can to keep your money safe, to do it smart, and to keep you as secure as we possibly can. And then you're going to run into the situations where some will, some won't, and sometimes you just have to say, well, so what next? You can't make everybody do something that they don't want to do. It's got to be the time that's right for them. I got this one out of the Economist magazine a couple years ago, just showing the whole concept of buying outside your area. For me, that was one of the big hang-ups in the beginning. Like I said, I'd always invested in Florida and in my own backyard. And so it was a little scary for me to take that leap and say, okay, I'm going to buy something in Texas now. But you know what? It worked out. You do it with management companies and all the different kind of stuff that we're taught here, and it does work. And it's interesting how after time it starts to kind of run itself. I mean, in a way. You still got to keep your eye on the ball. But things just start happening on their own, and it's very interesting how that happens. So, how'd that get in there? So anyway, I would suggest a plan of action for you. Number one, like Seuss talks about, you need deal flow. So what do you do to get the deal flow? Well, there's a lot of different things you can do. You can do the LoopNets of the world. You can do primary brokers. You can go for new brokers. A lot of people don't realize if you're doing the standard deals that the brokers have their own sometimes private websites. So go up that channel too. Don't just get on the LoopNets, but get on the brokers' websites, the Marcus and Millichaps, the whomever. Get on their email list. It may not be the greatest properties coming through, but you've got stuff coming your direction. And more importantly, you're seeing who's doing the deals, broker-wise. You're finding out who's working the market. So, okay, let me call John Smith here because he seems to be listing all this stuff in Atlanta or whatever that you're looking at. Of course, boot camps and coaching events. Those are awesome places to not only meet people who are on the same page, but guess what? Meet people who are investors, who might partner with you, who actually have money. I have found many times where we've found money in the room of these types of events, believe it or not. But they're not going to come running out the door and say, I've got $1 million, do you want it? No, a lot of those people are going to stand back here and check you out, just like anybody. If it was your $1 million, what would you do? Okay, who's this person? What do they have to offer? Do I like their personality, et cetera, et cetera? So another good thing is direct mailing campaigns. That's something that we did for a while, especially if you're going after the middle to medium-sized properties. You'll maybe get a situation where you actually get some of those mom and pop type sellers who are willing to do seller financing and stuff because they maybe owned it for 30 years or something. So that's sometimes something that can be tried as just another method to get that stuff coming across your desk. Management companies are awesome places. The second deal, the 232 unit deal, we actually found out about that deal from the management company in the area that had a lot of the holdings, and they had heard the rumblings through the network of people out there, and actually I think through the apartment association out there. And so we found out the deal was going to be listed, so were able to contact the broker and get the scoop on that deal like 2 days before it hit the market. So it was sort of off market. And then we, of course, sold the fact that we owned the property right across the street. We're more qualified than most of these other buyers are because we're so wonderful, and we got the deal. Another place, like we said, is apartment owners associations. Or another good thing is existing relationships. If you've built a relationship with a broker or with people you know, hey, don't be afraid to ask them, what do you got? What's going on? Who do you know? It's all a referral and it's all a people business. This is a people business. When it comes to investors, when it comes to property, when it comes to whatever, it's a people business. It's a relationship business. Capital sources, you've got to start working, as Sue has talked about, you've got to start working to raise the money, raise the capital, get your investors in line, and you can do that right away. If anything, and you say, oh, well, I don't have any credibility, I don't own any property right now. Well, you know what? That's okay, then do it via association. I'm associated with a group of people who own X amount of units, or I'm associated with, multimillionaires. I can do this business, so do it through association. That's nothing wrong with that, just don't lie. But, make it reasonable and show them that you do have some experience, and then start putting together your credibility package from there. I would also suggest target markets. If you're going to do your own backyard, yay, do it, that's awesome. But also pick 1, 2, 3 other markets, because the reality is in any given market at any time, there's only so many properties that'll be for sale if you're going down the standard route. Or there's only going to be so many notes up for sale, or whatever it is in that what you're doing. So if you can work 2 or 3 different markets at a time, don't overwhelm yourself, but get enough things coming across your desk that hopefully at some point in time one of those is going to stick, because it's a numbers game. And then, of course, asset management. That's what you're going to do with the whole thing once you're done with the process of closing and getting it all set in line.